Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Before starting the video, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so that you will never miss any updates from us. Also, be sure to leave a comment down below. We would love to hear from you. In July of 2022, as many as 17 European nations were under extreme heat warnings, with temperatures expected to rise even further in the coming years. This was the longest and most widespread heat dome to affect the continent in at least half a century. Heat domes are regions of high pressure that cause hot air to sit over a particular area. They can last for days or weeks, causing record-breaking temperatures. The most recent heat dome to hit Europe is the result of climate change, which has made these types of extreme weather events more frequent and more severe. And this heat dome was especially dangerous because it coincided with a drought that had been ravaging the continent since the beginning of the year. The drought has caused widespread crop failures, water shortages, and wildfires. And the heat dome exacerbated all of these problems. The situation is likely to continue to deteriorate in the coming weeks as the heat dome is not expected to break until mid-August. But do not worry, because today you'll find out what is going to happen when the temperature rises above 40 degrees Celsius. What is going to happen if there is no rain for an entire year? What do we have to do to prevent such catastrophes from happening again? So let's get started. 2022 has already been a year of extreme weather, from record-breaking heat waves to devastating floods, and the worst is yet to come. Scientists predict that the next few years will be the hottest on record, and that 2030 will be the year of the mega drought. But why is this happening now? To understand what is happening, we need to go back to the beginning of the year. In January, a La Niña event began in the Pacific Ocean. This is when the waters off the coast of South America cool, which affects weather patterns around the world. Niña years are typically associated with cooler than average temperatures in the United States and warmer than average temperatures in Europe. But this year is different. The current La Niña is the strongest on record, and it is already having a major impact on the weather. For example, in the United States, there have been widespread crop failures due to the lack of rain. And in Europe, there have been devastating floods in countries such as Germany and Belgium. But as we move into 2026, things are set to get even worse. That's because we are also in the middle of a solar maximum. This is when the sun's activity is at its peak, which means there are more sunspots and solar flares. These flares release huge amounts of energy, which can disrupt our planet's magnetic field and cause extreme weather. On top of that, we are also entering a new phase of the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation, or MO. This is a natural climate fluctuation that occurs over the course of several decades, and the AMO is currently shifting from a cool phase to a warm phase. This will cause the average temperature of the Atlantic Ocean to rise, which will lead to more heat being trapped in our lower atmosphere. All of these factors are combining to create the perfect storm for extreme weather. And unfortunately, things are not going to change anytime soon. According to the World Meteorological Organization, the next 5 years are likely to be the hottest on record. And this is just the beginning. Scientists predict that by 2030, we will see a 4-fold increase in the frequency of extreme heat waves. So what does this mean for us? Well, for starters, we can expect to see more widespread crop failures, water shortages, and wildfires. Heat waves are also responsible for thousands of deaths each year, so we can also expect to see an increase in mortality. On top of that, heat waves can also exacerbate air pollution, which can lead to respiratory problems and other health issues. Heat waves can also cause infrastructure damage. For example, in 2017, a heat wave in India caused the collapse of a bridge. Heat waves can also disrupt transportation. For example, in 2003, a heat wave in France caused widespread train delays. So as you can see, heat waves are a serious threat to our society. But the good news is that we are already taking steps to mitigate these risks. For example, many cities are now developing heat action plans which outline the steps that will be taken to protect vulnerable populations during a heat wave. Cities are also investing in green infrastructure, such as parks and trees, which can help to cool the city during a heat wave. In addition, governments are working to improve early warning systems so that people have time to take shelter during a heat wave. But these measures are not enough. We all need to do our part to prepare for the extreme heat. First and foremost, we need to educate ourselves about the risks of heat waves and the signs to look out for. We also need to have a plan in place for what we will do if there is a heat wave. This includes knowing where to go for cooling centers and having a way to communicate with family and friends. In addition, we need to check on our elderly neighbors and relatives who may not be able to cope with the heat. We can also do our part to help cool our communities by watering plants and trees, using public transportation and carpooling. By taking these steps, we can all help to create a more heat-resistant community. Heat waves are a serious threat, but by taking the right precautions, we can protect ourselves and our loved ones. As we move into 2026, we need to be prepared for the extreme weather that is coming our way. But this is not all. What would happen if it didn't rain for an entire year? If it didn't rain for an entire year, the consequences would be devastating. Most of the world's population would die, crops would fail, and economies would collapse. Let's take a closer look at what would happen. If it didn't rain for an entire year, most of the world's rivers would dry up. This would cause massive water shortages. Even areas that rely on groundwater would eventually run out of water. In fact, groundwater levels would drop so much that many parts of the world would become uninhabitable. Without water, most plants would die, which would lead to widespread famine. But it's not just crops that would suffer. Without water, forests would also die. In fact, many forests would be completely wiped out. And with no water, wildfires would rage across the planet. The combination of widespread famine and war would likely lead to the collapse of civilization as we know it. But how could this happen? Well, it's actually more likely than you might think. In fact, scientists predict that there is a 1 in 6 chance that it will happen within the next 200 years. The odds are currently 1 in 20. It's not certain when it will happen, but it could happen sooner rather than later. That's because the Earth's orbit is slowly changing. The Earth is moving away from the sun, which means that we are getting less sunlight and it is becoming colder. At the same time, the Earth's axis is also shifting, which means that the northern hemisphere is receiving less and less rain. All of these factors are combining to create the perfect storm for a mega drought. This is why it is so important to take steps now to prepare for a future without water. We need to invest in new technologies that can help us find water and purify it. We also need to develop new ways of farming that require less water. Finally, we need to find new sources of energy that don't rely on burning fossil fuels. Only then will we be prepared for the future. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified of our latest videos.